Hello everybody, Earl here. So today we'll be doing a Skul tier list. So there are a couple of rules before we start. First of all, every Skul in the game will be assumed to be legendary, so at their peak form. Second of all, we will not be taking into consideration specific builds. So for magic builds or for magic Skuls, we will not be considering having Oberon, for example. For physical builds, we will not be considering having Black Thief's Dagger or Kyrion every run. So it will be more on a general basis of which skulls can do good and which skulls cannot do that good. So we'll start in this order, like the order that they are naturally listed here, and we'll go from there. First, let us set the name of the tiers. S is for spectacular. These guys are busted. These guys are just all kinds of broken. Like, they do way too good at almost anything in the game. A. These guys are amazing or almost broken. So these guys are actually balanced in a way. So they are too good at one thing but bad at another, or just good at both things but not broken levels of good. So these guys are just where the average skull should be. B. These guys are starting to become bad. So these skulls have flaws. They have minor flaws that just stop them from being good or A tier. C is crippling flaws. These guys are the same as B, but the flaws of the skulls in this tier are exceptionally bad, almost breaking their entire style levels of bad. And D is just destroyed. These guys are only to fuel your bone fragments, and honestly, I'm not sure why they would be used for anything else besides meme builds. But let us start. First of all, Ghoul. Ghoul goes straight into C. So Ghoul as an idea is he's good. So he becomes big, he becomes chunky, he deals damage, but he has two major weaknesses. First of all, by becoming big, he not only gets stuck into places where he shouldn't, but he also becomes a bigger target. So that means you get hit by a lot more stuff. And once you become your like bigger size, like your biggest size, it's you'll be hit by pretty much anything. Any attack that comes at you, you'll be hit unless you're good at dodging. But the fact that he's also power skull, so he has a single dodge for tackle, does not help. If he could heal with his meat chunks, or maybe get some damage reduction or something, that would help him a lot, but right now it's really bad. And the second weakness is he cannot get meat chunks off of bosses. So he basically becomes one of the weakest skulls possible against bosses. You just have two abilities and his main game, his entire thing just does not work. It would be fine if you were really good against monsters in like rooms, in average rooms, but he's not, so he just at C. With a couple of buffs, he could definitely be B or A, but right now just not. Gambler. Gambler is he's currently bad, but bad not in the sense that his game plan does not work. His his game plan does work. He just needs a significant damage buff because right now his the damage he deals, unless you get a lucky hit, it's really bad. And even a lucky hit on his abilities, it's still very meh. It's okay. It's average. When you get a lucky hit, you should be dealing chunks, but you don't, and that's a big issue. Until he gets that fixed, or more like buffed, he'll remain in B. Next, Aqua Skull. Again, C. This guy is he can deal some damage. His swapping ability does deal significant damage, but otherwise he doesn't have much going for him. His passive, the one that sends out waves, isn't that great. It pushes away enemies, but you're a power skull and you're so slow that it's not that great, honestly. And the damage the waves deal is again not that great. The damage from his abilities is okay-ish, but again, nothing much. He doesn't have much going for him. That's the big thing. So unless he gets like a significant damage buff or some other thing, he'll remain in C. He's not unusable. He's just really, really, really hard to use. Let's see. Warrior. Warrior is again in C. His idea is really good. I really enjoy his idea. Basically, you charge your attack and then you deal massive damage. And at Legendary, he does deal some pretty big damage, but the thing is, I have no idea why when he goes from Unique to Legendary, he doesn't get a buff in the literal sense, he just gets a second level of concentration. Like one level of concentration wasn't hard enough. So if they did it so that in Legendary form he doesn't have two concentrations, just one, but that one is buffed, like to the point where the second concentration right now is, I think he would be much better, but right now it just doesn't work. He takes way too long to deal decent damage, but still way too long. And if the opponent dodges or just moves or does anything, like if you're up against the hero, you'll never land a hit if you take that long to charge. So he definitely has a big weakness in this regard, but otherwise, like if they just fix that one thing, he will see a lot more play in my opinion. Next up is Genie. Genie is bad unless you use him for meme builds, for like dash Genie builds. He's not that great. He doesn't deal much damage. Although he has a double dash, he has no invincibility frames on it. He has a teleport, and it's actually much harder not to get hit with his dash than other power skills dash. So he can do stuff. He's pretty quick. He has a lot of invincible moves, but it just nothing really exceptional. There's nothing that really stands out for Genie. And now we're going into Bomber. This is the real stuff. Bomber is almost broken. So Bomber is the definition of a support skull. He is the single best support skull in the game. So once you get to Legendary, although you need Kaboom to make it work, you can just swap, Kaboom, swap back, and you will deal a chunk of damage. It is actually way too good. And before it was patched, like back when Double Bomber was a thing, it was the single strongest skull in the game, but now he just remains at A. He's just a really good skull. There's no reason not to pick him if you're going for a magic build and don't know what you're going to use for a second skull. So he's usually the pick. Hunter. Hunter has crippling flaws. Hunter, although his idea of attacking from a range is really good and it keeps him safe and stuff, he deals no damage. His damage is actually zero. No matter how much you try to build him for damage, he will not deal any. It will take him literal ages to deal anything at all. And at that point, no matter how far away you stay, you're still gonna get hit way more than your opponent. You have to do way too much damage. Like, you need a godlike build for this guy to deal decent damage. And that's not good. Clown. Clown, on the other hand, he's also ranged like Hunter, but he deals chunks. He has an extremely high DPS. You just build this guy for physical. You spam your normal attack, your basic attack, and life bars evaporate. He's good at both bosses and rooms. He's not exceptional at any of them, but he's just really good. So he's almost broken. He's A tier, easily. Next up is Minotaur. Minotaur is a power skull. I think that's the best way I can name this guy. He has a single dash, so that's already a disadvantage. He deals a decent damage, so that's good. So he is not C tier, but that's about it. He's pretty slow, his damage is not enough. He deals good damage, but not enough damage. So at this point, it's just like he does what he wants to do, but power skulls right now they just aren't it. Like there are very, very few power skulls that actually do what they're supposed to. And Minotaur, for being a power skull, he deals very average damage, so that single tackle is just it's a huge setback. Next up is Frost. I know I'm gonna get death mail for this, but he's A tier. I know a lot of people consider him to be S tier, but he really is not. Without a really, really good build, including things like Mana Bone and Mage's Necklace or other pretty disgustingly strong magic items, he's not gonna be S tier. And if you don't run into those, he's a good skull. He can do well against bosses, he can do well against runes, but he doesn't shine in any of them. So right now he will just stay in A tier, and that will be fine. If he gets buffs, although I don't want anyone in A tier to get buffs or nerfs. So I think Frost right now is in a really, really good spot. Next up we have the big boy himself, the Werewolf. Werewolf is spectacular. He's busted beyond reason. If you know anything about speedrunning, you know why he's S tier. Hunt is disgustingly overpowered. It will melt any boss in the game in seconds. It will melt rooms. It will melt adventurers. Anything this guy wants to do, he's gonna do it and you cannot stop him. And it's no wonder that the best speedruns, the fastest speedruns in the game right now, are all done with Werewolf. It is to be expected from a guy like him. He is too good right now. Do I think he should get nerfed? Maybe a bit. Hunt deals way too much right now. It just shouldn't deal that much. But I'm really happy to see a common skull in S, to be honest. So there's that. Next up is Gargoyle. Honestly, this is just my bias speaking, but destroy this guy. This guy is not great. He doesn't have anything going for him. His basic attack is very weak. He requires you to be in the air and float. Even with good builds, he's still at best below average. His game plan is boring. Honestly, I'm not sure how anyone could defend this guy. He really doesn't have anything going for him. He's not fun, he's not good, he's just there to be destroyed, like 11 bones. That's good enough, right? Next up we have Recruit. Recruit is 80. He's almost broken. Once you get a legendary, he summons literal armies. You can do army versus army fights in Arc 4 with this guy, and honestly, he's so safe. He can deal really good damage against bosses too, but the fact that he can remain so safe while still dealing damage is so good. His damage against bosses is not particularly exceptional for him to be S tier, but it's still really good. So right now he's in a really good spot. Such a good skull. Thief. One of the only skulls in the game that can be used with similar effectiveness in both physical and magical builds. Physical Thief is extremely good. Magical Thief is extremely good. No matter what you go with this guy, he's gonna melt anything in the way, and he's gonna give you a lot of money for it. Now, do I think he's broken? Absolutely not. He is just really good. He does not melt bosses, he does not feel unfair, he just feels really good. His game plan is really well thought out. So right now he's where he needs to be. Little Skul. Little Skul is bad. Now remember when I said that we do not take into account specific builds with specific items. And basic Skul is the very definition of bad Skul that becomes extremely good with items. Once you get Mana Bone and Mage's Necklace, Little Skul is absolutely in here. He's A tier. No questions asked. No one in the entire world will say otherwise. However, if you don't run into those, he's not that great. There's no... He doesn't have much going for him. His one big strength is his ability to spam abilities. Pretty much have no cooldown on either of them. So that is why he becomes pretty much one of the best Mana Bone users in the entire game. But without that, you shouldn't go for a Little Skul run. Like, it's actually extremely hard. Try to get Skeleton King, for example, without Mana Bone or Mage's Necklace. Or Abra. It's way too hard. Next up, Skeleton Sword, the Sword Boy. The Sword Boy was fixed. He used to be a purely status effect inducing guy, and he was turned into a damage over time dealing guy. And now all of his abilities, they do an initial hit, and then they deal magic damage after a short while. That is really good because right now he's actually usable against bosses. What he does is not exceptionally broken, but it is good. It is very good. He will work in both rooms and bosses, but he's not exactly shining in any of them. So right now he's just A tier. I'm really happy about him. Shield Skul. The Shield Skul is a functioning power type Skul. So he has a single dash. That's good. We don't mind that. He has all the disadvantages of a normal power Skul, like he has a bad air attack. However, although he does not deal damage, he is extremely hard to pull down. You can literally just hold down the attack button with this guy, and the game will eventually end. It's not exactly fast game, but it will end sometime. You will not die though. Definitely you will not die before your opponent. So right now you can either put him at the top of B or A. Personally, I say he's A tier, but I can see an argument for him being B tier. He's just way too safe to be put in B tier in my opinion. It's actually hard to lose with this guy as long as you know what you're doing. Pike. Pike is the boy, the man, the dash attack user. He is extremely good. Once you get the legendary and you get the ability that puts your dash on pretty much no cooldown, just get a bunch of dash attack items and he will deal a ton of damage. You don't even need Kyrian, but with Kyrian he deals chunks. But even without that, you will still deal quite a bit of damage. He goes through rooms, he doesn't really care about anything really. So you really want to go with this guy. He's in a really good spot. Not broken, not bad. He's almost broken though. Mummy. Mummy is A tier. Mummy is extremely good right now. Even without specific builds, his poison balls, the Mummy balls, are really good. His other poison abilities are really good. His stab ability is really good. His rockets and grenades are actually pretty decent. So he doesn't shine in anything he does. He's just really good at clearing rooms with his Mummy balls. Although there's pretty much nothing this guy cannot do. He's not exceptionally good at it, but he can do everything. Reaper. Oh boy. Reaper is the top of A tier. So Reaper is the most broken skull in the game when it comes to clearing rooms. What Grim Reaper does to rooms is far and beyond what any other skull in the game does. If, however, he has one big weakness, that he's terrible against bosses. So if you were good against bosses, though, I would have to invent an SS tier here. That's how good he is. So even though he's terrible against bosses, what he does to rooms is actually unfair. I have no idea how any of that is fair. Losing to a room using Grim Reaper is actually a sin. It's illegal. But I'm really happy for my boy Grim Reaper. He does what he wants and he does it well. He's not broken though, which is fun. He's my favorite skull in the game, so why not? Yaksha, the other legendary, the only power type legendary, and he has crippling flaws. He deals decent damage, but he is a power type skull, so that alone is a disadvantage. And the biggest disadvantage is that his stomp just does not work the way it's intended, or more like it should be intended. Like, I have no idea why it is so hard to build his stomps. Like, there's no reason why any of his basic attack should not be a stomp, or at least contribute to that. Once the big stomp comes out, though, he deals good damage, but until then, he's very, very bad. So right now, until they fix his stomp to be something that can be more reliable or spam more often, then he has to remain in C. Like, the fact that he cannot use stomps that often, or that not everything contributes to these stomps, is a major crippling flaw. Moving on, we have Samurai. Samurai is absolutely A tier. Samurai is, how to say it, he's decent in rooms. He's not exceptionally good, he's just okay, he's alright. Against bosses, he's really good. However, even though there are builds that can make him one-shot just about any boss, those are specific builds. You need Orc, you need Kyrian, you need Hope Slasher, you need a lot of other things to make this guy work. And unless you have all of those, he becomes okay against bosses. He becomes bearable. So because of that, he remains in A tier. And the fact that his Full Moon Slash has such a big cooldown technically, because you need to attack 1,000 times, you need to attack 1,000 enemies. It really pulls him back, because although there is good room clearing, you will not want to use that before a boss. It's not going to work. You want to save that for a boss. Next up, Dark Paladin. Dark Paladin is almost broken. What he does is extremely good. His attacks go from physical to magical damage. Once he gains that shield, he deals really good damage. He can clear crowds, he can kill bosses, but he does not do anything unfair. He is extremely good, but it stops there. Next up, Berserker. The only functioning power type skull. This guy does what he's supposed to do. He's a power type skull. He's supposed to deal a lot of damage, and he does. Once he gets that bone screen to become a demon and increases attack speed and all that kind of jazz, he melts. He actually deals way too much damage. However, he is still a power type skull, so he has a single dash. He sacrifices life bar to use his bone scream at legendary. He doesn't, even then, he doesn't do anything particularly evaporating against bosses. So right now he has to remain in A tier. Next up is Ninja. He's A tier. He's really good. He has very spammable abilities, and his And Infinite Bone is really good with this guy, because he has 4 abilities. The only skull in the game to have 4 abilities that he can use at a time. However, the weakness that Ninja has is the fact that he does not deal very great damage. He has very specific skills that can deal decent damage, but that's about where it stops, honestly. Even with those specific skills, it's not anything crazy, so against bosses, it's kind of a struggle. But besides that, he's kind of hard to control, but he's really good. Next up, we have Predator. The Power Skull that literally is not a Power Skull at this point. His Power Skull only name. He has 2 dashes. He does not have lunging air attack. And yeah, like he just shouldn't be a Power Skull in my opinion. However, like a Power Skull, he evaporates anything he touches. At Legendary, he has half of his cooldown decreased whenever he spams his ability at max. And that means pretty much you can always spam abilities, and these abilities deal a chunk of damage. They will evaporate any boss in the game, they will evaporate any room in the game. You just keep pressing that button and things will die. It's actually so trigger happy, you don't even need to think about it. Right now he's actually spectacular. He's broken. Next up, Archmage. Archmage is the definition of an A tier. He is extremely safe and extremely good in rooms, but he struggles massively against bosses. Against bosses, you will get hit a lot, because the only decent ability this guy has is practically Meteor against bosses. And against rooms, again, pretty much the same thing. Meteor is the only... Actually, not the only, but more like it's the best ability this guy has. Hands down. However, while he's summoning the Meteor, you cannot attack. And once the concentration finishes, so that the Meteor comes down, there is a time frame where you cannot do anything. So you can get hit by a lot during bosses. But the good thing is, in rooms, he can spam the Meteor from anywhere, which is why he's A tier. So against rooms, he's extremely good. But against bosses, he struggles a lot. Prisoner. One of my favorite skulls. One of my favorite skulls is absolutely A tier. He's almost broken. He deals very good damage. He has very spammable abilities. He is very fast. He does really good at what he wants to do. But he's not unfair. Once you get things like Kyrian and Hope Slasher, then maybe he starts looking a bit unfair, but at that point, who doesn't? So with a broken build, he can be unfair, but we don't count those, so he's just really good. He remains here. Champion, again, similar thing as Prisoner. His parry ability is hands down his best ability. Quick Step does pretty good damage. His parry is the best in the game. Like, combine all other parry abilities and this guy still beats them all because it has no cooldown. You can pretty much parry everything in the game consecutively and give no shits. If you're good, you can do a perfect full Skul run with this guy. It will require you to be an actual AI to do that, but it's still possible. He can grant you that wish. Moving on, we have Rider. Rider is a tough spot. So it's easy to put Rider in S. Rider deletes rooms. His basic attack, it's actually criminal how little people talk about his basic attack, but it is one of the best in the game. It has extremely good speed, extremely good range, and extremely good angle with his vertical attacks. And yeah, just that alone is good enough to put him in things like A tier. But we all know the star of the show. It's the bike. The bike will, at legendary, because at rare and unique it will not deal that much damage, but at legendary it will delete anything in the game. It will delete any boss, it will delete any room, it will delete everything. However, there are reasons why I believe Rider is actually A tier and not S, despite deleting, as I said, both rooms and crowds. Although he technically does the same thing as Predator, he's limited. In rooms, if the room has things like platforms, this guy does not work. It's impossible to get this guy to jump platforms with the speed of his bike. If the room has a lot of traps, you will take a lot of damage. If you fight against the Joan, you can fall and you will take forever to actually jump back out. You can fall into the the lava floor. But other than that, he's really good. So he has a really high skill cap, or more like skill ceiling. But so for that very reason, he just is not on the same level as Predator, because he has these shortcomings where he does not work, but Predator does, and that's the only reason why I'm not putting Rider at S, because I cannot say that he is in the same level as Predator. Predator just does what he does, but better, and with less cooldown. Next up is Rockstar. Rockstar is one of the best boss-killing skulls in the game. He absolutely evaporates everything. If you don't know how he can do that, just watch my previous video, Rockstar proving he's godlike, and you will understand why he evaporates light bars. You don't even need a good build, just a decent build works with this guy. So that is extremely powerful. However, he's not that great against rooms, so I will have to put him at A. He deals a ton of damage, but against rooms he has really poor basic attack, and his amps, while they're pretty good, they're not good at clearing crowds that are way too spread out. And while his band will clear any room, do you really want to waste your band on rooms? That's the only issue this guy has. We'll be skipping Arcleage for now and going straight to Living Armor. Living Armor is he's a decent power score. He can clear rooms really well. He can deal some decent-ish damage against bosses, but that's about where it stops. He's still a power skull, however, he does not have a lunging attack. But that is a good thing, because he can actually attack in the air like a normal person. And once he gets to legendary, he gets that second bar of flame spirits. He deals really good damage in rooms, especially. Like his fire, he can literally fill out the entire room with fire, all that kind of stuff. He's really good. Alchemist. Okay, so Fire Alchemist is probably S tier. All right, probably. Alchemist is really good at clearing rooms. He has pretty much no worries about cooldowns. All his cooldowns are really short. His fire deals a ton of damage. His rooms are just negated by Golem. You don't even need to worry that much, and yeah, bosses just evaporate. However, Alchemist has only one ability he can reroll, and he has 5 possible potions. And out of these 5 potions, only the fire one is good. The rest are decent, possibly even below decent against bosses, because you cannot apply status effects. So is it even fair to count Alchemist as a fire user when it's only 1 in 5 alchemists that will do that? I will say not. Unless you have a fire alchemist, Alchemist is A tier. He's really good. He does what he wants to do really well, but against bosses he will struggle a bit. He needs a second skull. There are many flaws to this guy. But he's good at what he wants to do, and if you run into that fire pot, definitely either top of A tier, like right next to Green Reaper, or S tier. And destroy End, honestly, I have no idea how this guy's game plan is so flawed. He goes from physical to magical to physical again to a bit more magical. It's like I don't get why he shifts damages so much. It's so hard to build this guy. And even when you get into legendary, he still has some abilities that are magical, some abilities that are physical. He just does not work. He is a power skull, that's a weakness. He does not deal that great of damage, he's really slow. He doesn't have anything going for him. He's one of the weakest skulls in the game, just destroy this guy. And now, the cherry on top. Arcleage. You all know Arcleage is S tier. And in my opinion, he is one of the, if not the single best skull in the game. He can clear rooms. His basic attack is probably the best in the game. It has a lot of range, it deals a lot of damage, and it keeps everyone away. So his basic attack alone is really good. Seal or Death Trap erases bosses. Prison slows down everything, and that works on bosses, even though they're immune to status effects, so that's also really good. All of his other abilities also deal good damage. The only meh ability he has is the one that spawns spikes from the ground. That's like the March, I believe. That is not great. It does not deal that great of damage. It's not that great at clearing things. But other than that, all of his other abilities are either decent or broken. This guy is way too good. He's the definition of a spectacular skull. Well, that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this tier list, everyone. If you have anything you disagree with, tell me in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Ciao.